Hi guys, welcome back to the shop. Today what we're going to look at is measurement, and more specifically metric and imperial measurement systems. The title of the video is learn to use both. Probably not a good idea to use both at the same time on the same project, but it's certainly worthwhile having a familiarity with both systems. Now, to give an example of these, I have three exhibits, so to speak, set up, and what we'll do is go through those and just indicate or demonstrate how a familiarity of both systems would yield benefits. Now, just be aware of the various pitfalls that can befall you. I have a classic one myself. I went on Amazon looking for an indexable pry bar, which is one where the head can move in and out, so on and so forth. I was looking for a sort of a 2-foot version, which would be about 24 inches, somewhere thereabouts. So this is the one I was looking for on Amazon, and not paying attention, this is the one I ended up with. So bit of a toy. It'll probably be useful for something, I'm not too sure what, but this turned out to be 21 centimeters long as opposed to effectively 21 inch or whatever else. So there's two lessons we learned there. Number one, make sure that you're converting properly, you're keeping an eye on your centimeters versus your inches. And the second thing is, when you're buying on Amazon, you might pay a bit of attention to what you're doing. All right. Now, Exhibit A is the tractor tire. This is a Finnish manufactured tractor manufactured in Finland, and it's sitting on BKT tires, which are manufactured in India. And the specification for the tire is 600/65 or 38. And this just demonstrates the crossover between metric and imperial measurements. The first measurement that we have here, the 600, is 600 millimeters in terms of depth. So if we take out our tape measure, just to demonstrate, what we have then is our 600 millimeters. We'll hold that up there. And that equates to just shy of 2 foot, so 24 inches roughly. The next designation then is the 65, and that measures in percentage terms the profile of the tire. So the profile of this tire from the outside of the rim to the top of the groove should be 65% of 600. So that should be 390, I think. So if we take our measuring tape, stick it against the rim there, what we're looking at there is, roughly speaking, about 390 millimeters. Now, the next section then, the R38, is actually the width of the tire hub in inches. So this is a classic demonstration of metric, a percentage classification then for sidewall height, and then sitting on a 38-inch rim. And if we measure across the rim, it's 38 inches. Now, Exhibit 2 on our list of crossover designations, a very good example which you could come into contact with quite often, is socket sets. The drive mechanism on these, or the square drive section, is measured in imperial, 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, and then you can get a range of sockets then to go on those drives, which can be metric or imperial. So again, just an example of where you'll come across both sitting inside in the same tool or piece of equipment or whatever. Now, Exhibit 3 in the last one of this list is a camera. Now, if anybody is familiar with cameras, or you have a camera yourself, generally speaking, and I'll hold it up to the screen there, what you can see there is the focal length on this is a little zoom lens, and it's 28 to 80 millimeters. And all cameras are classed with their focal lengths in millimeters. So on the same piece of equipment then, if we turn it over, on the bottom, there's a screw thread there for tripod mounting, and that tripod mounting is a 1/4 which is a 1/4 inch by 20 threads per inch. There's two types of those in the camera world. There's a 1/4, and then there's a bigger one then for slightly bigger cameras, which is 3/8 of an inch with 16 threads per inch, and they're universal pretty much globally. This is Nikon, made in Japan, and comes with as I said, metric and imperial on the same piece of equipment. So again, just familiarize yourself with both systems. Now, in terms of length, the most important conversion factor that we need to use or keep an eye on is 1 inch equals 25.4 millimeters. In terms of the metric system, what you'll find there is things are measured into 1,000ths or 100ths depending, and we'll say from 1,000 points of view, so 1 over 1,000 is equal to a milli, and that could be millimeter, a milliliter, milli, etc. 1 over 100 is equal to centi. So that could be a centimeter or centiliter. So 1 over 1,000 is a milli, 1 over 100 is a centi. There are occasions where you'll cross 1 over 10 as well, which is a deca or a deciliter, yeah. So just keep an eye on those as well. When it comes to getting into bigger measurements then, I will just draw a line here, what we're looking at then is kilo, which is equal to multiplied by 1,000. So milli is 1,000th, and kilo is 1,000 by whatever your term of measurement is. So what we'll find there now as we go through the system is that there's certain things that will keep popping up. For example, a good example would be welding rods. Welding rods here in Ireland come in 1.6, 2.5, 3.2, 4, etc., right? Millimeters. And what you'll find with those is they're sort of unusual numbers. The 1.6 millimeter is 1/16th of an inch. The 2.5 is 3/32 of an inch. 3.2 is 1/8 of an inch. And the 4 then obviously, and so on and so forth from there as you get into the bigger rod sizes. So what you'll find is that there will be numbers which sort of seem odd on the face of them, but if you look back or look further into them, they'll start to make sense then coming out of an old imperial system, or vice versa, in an imperial system coming out of the metric system. So that's just the first section there on metric. Now, in terms of using inches, generally speaking, we'll say what you'll use inches for sort of small length stuff, that'll go up to feet then, which is 12 inches, or a foot is 12 inches. For larger stuff like lengths of timber and so on and so forth. You'll go into yards then for pacing something out, and then pushing into miles then for distance as opposed to length. So in terms of imperial measurements, as we go down here smaller, what we'll do is we'll break down into the fraction side of it. So we'll have 1/2, quarter, 1/8, 16th, 32, 64th, 128th. So as you can see there, if you need to halve something in the imperial system, what you need to do is divide below the line, or multiply below the line by 2. So 2 2s are 4, 2 4s are 8, and you can see the progression there. It's a sort of a geometric progression of a factor of 2 underneath the line. So that's measured then, or that measure sort of length. If you're measuring a piece of wood or a piece of steel, it could be 1.5 inches, 1 1/16th, 1 7/16th, so on and so forth. And you'll come across those sizes in spanners, wrenches, sockets, etc. as well. When we go smaller then, what we look at then is we're getting into 1,000ths of an inch. And this will be more generally used in engineering tolerances. And they're more commonly referred to as thou. So if you come across something that's finished to 2 thou clearance, that's 2,000ths of an inch tolerance between one part or another, okay? So that just gives you an idea then as regards how we operate in feet, inches, etc., etc. Now, one of the areas where we need to keep an eye on, and this will be particularly important in a sort of a European context, or certainly a British and an Irish context where we sort of run both systems, is not making the mistake where 1 inch, or sorry, an inch part is not the same as a 25.4 millimeter part. Now, a very good example of this would be saw blades in particular. This one here has a bore size in it, which is the hole in the middle, of 1 inch, which is 25.4 millimeters. Very important to make sure that if you are fitting units together, that you don't put a 25 mil or a 25.4 mil blade on a 25 mil arbor shank. There's enough play in that 0.4 of a millimeter that it won't clamp correctly, and what you'll get then is vibration and premature blade wear. Okay, so that's sort of lengths, or a brief discussion on lengths. So we have anything else to say on lengths? Yeah, we're okay. Right. Now, into our weight section, and our most important conversion factor in weights is 2.2 pounds equals 1 kg, which is equal to 1,000 grams. Again, demonstrating the kilo prefix before something. So, this is fairly straightforward. It's a pretty good universal conversion. In an imperial context, the pound is divided into ounces. And then when you start going up, then you can get 14 pounds in a stone, X amount of stone in a ton, and so on and so forth. One thing to be careful with as regards weights is that there's a big difference between a ton over here, and we'll stick it in here, not equal to a ton over here. There's two different spellings. T-O-N-N-E is a metric ton, and that's equal to 1,000 kilograms. Okay. A ton on the imperial side is equal to two things. Number one, there's 2,000 pounds in a US ton, and that can also be called a net ton, US ton net, or a short ton. Right? In the old imperial system then, or the traditional imperial system, we have 2,240 pounds, which is, we'll call it English ton. Also known as a gross ton, also known as a long ton. So one of the areas to be careful with is if you are using tons in an imperial context, make sure that you check out whether they're US tons or English tons. There's obviously a 10% differential there or thereabouts. And just keep an eye on the spelling. T-O-N is an imperial ton, either US or English, and then the metric ton is spelled T-O-N-N-E. Okay. See now. I think generally speaking as well, or sort of a word of advice would be that if you are speccing weights, it's easy enough on the metric side, but if you are speccing weights on the imperial side, stick with the pounds. So instead of saying that a trailer can take 6-7 ton of material, where you'll open up inconsistency or confusion as regards what that ton stands for, just multiply whatever you have by pounds. So let's say, quote, your trailer capacity is 7,000 pounds or £10,000 or whatever it takes. That's an incontrovertible measurement standard. Okay, so that's weight. What we move on to now? Well, we move on to volume. Now we're into volume, and from a metric point of view, reasonably straightforward. What we're looking at is a litre is the sort of the standard base measure. 1,000th of that is equal to a millilitre, and then we quote upwards. Then we don't have a multiplication factor for the litre. You won't come across a decalitre or a kilolitre or anything like that. We'll use litres up to quite a high point, and then we'll move into meters cubed then after that. And a metre cubed, just for information's sake, is equal to 1,000 litres. And just as a handy tip, that equals 1 metric ton. So if you're ever looking to work out, we'll say what weight is in a sort of a trade or something like that, if you measure the three sides of it by the metre, or sorry, in meters, both length by breadth by height, multiply them out, and you'll get a litre / ton equivalent then. Just be aware of it. But anyway, getting back to our volume. As I said, litre and millilitres are just sort of the two designations from a metric point of view. What we need to look at then is the US and the Imperial. So an Imperial pint, which would be sort of an English pint, is equal to 568 millilitres. A US pint, 473. So there's obviously a differential there. There's 8 pints in a gallon, both in the Imperial and the US systems, which leads us then to the fact that an Imperial English gallon is 4.54 litres, and a US gallon then is about 3.78 litres. So what I would suggest is that if you are dealing with volumes in an Imperial environment, just make sure that you're dealing with the correct one, whether it's an English Imperial or US Imperial. Okay. Now, just before I go, one of the things which I'd recommend anybody buy is one of these. This is digital calipers. You can get them also in sort of non-digital versions called the Vernier Caliper. And we'll say where one of these shines out in particular is the way that you can convert between millimeters and inches. And in particular, this one has 3 functions. It has millimeters, inches, and then it also has fractional inches. So just for example's sake now, if we bring this up to, for argument's sake, 6.35. Tough enough to do on camera. Right, 6.33 should be close enough. If we press our conversion button, that's 0.2485 inches. But if we press our button again, what it'll do then is it'll actually demonstrate to you that it's 1/4 of an inch. So one of these is very valuable when it comes to sort of finding out what odd sizes are available or whatever else like that, okay? So, apart from that, if you've any questions, stick them in the comments down below. Till the next video, I'll see you then.